Jamesa. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad you agreed to come on the show.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah, and you're on my show called Engineer Her Path, and we're streaming live on LinkedIn. It's gonna be on podcast and YouTube. But I always like to start off every show with talking about why I picked the person to be on my show. I think you reached out to me on LinkedIn, and we just
Yeah.
did like a connection chat just a meet and greet chat. And it was funny because I don't think we realized how much we had in common until we
Right,
actually met and talked.
right, right. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is I totally already knew you. So when I reached out, I was like, hey, how you been doing? And you were like, I'm fine. And then when we finally, had the virtual chat, you were like, this is the first time actually meeting. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So
It felt so easy talking, and we're both in the same geographic area,
yeah.
actually, and we're both women in STEM. And towards the end of the conversation, I realized you're also super into personal finance, like me. So
And
be a fun conversation combining
it
like
was.
all interest and loves together. Yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, hello, all across all social media platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcasts, right? Is that what I'm supposed to say? My name is Ja'Mesa Dixon. I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I am someone who has been on a very interesting career journey. I did not consider myself a STEM person until talking to Sandra, funny enough. I currently work as a Scrum Master. And prior to that, I was actually a financial analyst. So, yeah, so did a huge career change, and I love every minute of it. I love my company. I learn new things every day to keep me on my toes. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here, and that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah, so let's dive into that because yeah, you did make a career change. Well, not a huge change, but like a pivot, right? You were financial analyst, and tell us about that and how you moved into the Scrum Master type of work.
Yeah, so I always like numbers, right? So I did that career for 5 years, but during the great sit down, I'll call it, started thinking about what I wanted to do. If I wanted a trajectory in finance, like do I want to go, CFO route or do a director of finance? Like, do I really want to do numbers for the rest of my life? Because it became kind of monotonous. But the thing I love to do was like I love process improvement. I love work team collaboration. Like I love interacting with our departments, which will consider stakeholders. I love doing that type of work. And I just started doing the research to see what type of careers I could do that. And I stumbled upon Agile through a mentor at my previous company, and they said they were a product owner. And I was like, what's a product owner? He was like, look it up. And then I learned about this thing called Agile and some lean. And, lean correlated to the industry I was in at the time. And I just was like, oh my goodness, like, I didn't even know this existed. And this sounds so like me. And I just went on the journey to learn as much as I can, connect with as many people as I can. I got my first cert in the fall of 2021, and then I was like, okay, I got the cert. What's next? And that led to more continuous education. Eventually, I landed an opportunity to help a nonprofit in the agile education space. So I was doing that while also having a full-time role, and I started to take on more projects in my current role once my leadership saw that I had interest in that. So yeah, that's kind of how all that happened. And then I finally made the leap. So definitely got out of my comfort zone and leaving the company that I was with for almost 2 years.
Wow. But yeah, let's go back to, you had that turning point. You're talking about the great sit down.
A great
What do
sit
you
down.
think, inspired you or made you stop and think to make that change or to question things?
Well, that was a time where all we had to do was sit down, right? And I wasn't like an active person, but I was on autopilot. And it allowed me to be really intentional and
Mm,
to think about because when you're in a situation like that, you don't know what the future holds, right? And you're just praying for the best. And so I'm like, I'm gonna actually use this time to get in touch with who I really am and what I want to do, kind of a reset. So that's what kind of inspired that to me even think about like you've just been going to work every day. Like you're just in survival mode, right? And so like, no, let's really dream. And so that's kind of what inspired me. Um, I feel like that time, tragic as a lot of I was grateful for that time to just really focus and do that.
Wow. It's kind of enlightening because it made you stop and reassess. And like you're talking about, we can get in the rut of day to day life
Hmm.
or a comfortable job or
Hmm.
what you've always been doing or what's been
Hmm.
expected of you. So did
Exactly.
you have a shift from like where you're working on site and then you were remote all of a sudden, or how much of a shift was it for you?
Well, yes. So we definitely, I remember the funny thing is I got a promotion the day before. They were like, okay, this is in March. Well, it was announced, but it didn't become effective until like a couple of months later. So it was announced, and then they were like, okay, go home, and we'll let you know when can come back. Well, we didn't come back for a while. Then we came back in July of 20 for a little bit to do a hybrid, and then it picked back up, and then they were like, okay, go home again. So, so I didn't really start my new rhythm and hybrid schedule until probably the following 22.
Wow. But during that whole time, you're being paid and you're work from home, or
Yeah, I was still working. I mean, yeah, I was in the healthcare industry, so they were essential. So medical education was essential. Like that was an interesting time for like medical students, health profession students, because they had to learn in crisis. So like operations was still. So I was fortunate that I could still,
Mhm.
you know, I still had income and things like that because it's like they were the essential workers at that time. Outside is like supply chain and things like that. Like you need healthcare professionals.
Okay. But just that more time at home and time where you couldn't go out kind of made you reassess your career and what you wanted to do. That's interesting. And that's probably a good thing that came out of that time period for you when you look back on it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
gonna
So
do something a little.
trained and got certified to move into this new career path, the Scrum Master type of work.
So I will say the advantage of working remote allowed me to like, use time like especially like lunch times and things like that, I could go to virtual conferences, right? So I attended this virtual conference, Black in Tech, and I was attending the session and things like that. And there was someone in the chat that was like, "Hey, I'm doing this free agile training this this weekend, this Saturday and Sunday. Just register here," and they had the link. And I was like, "Oh, it's free! Like, what a perfect opportunity!" Because prior to that, I was using Clubhouse. So if everybody knows that Clubhouse at the time was really a big thing. So I was just listening into a lot of the rooms on Clubhouse and learning that way. But this was the first time that it was an actual formal training. So I signed up for that, took the training, and at the end of it, they were like, okay, well, this is the cost to take the certification. And I was like, well, I don't have that, but this is great knowledge to have. Well, they ended up having a raffle, and I won the raffle. So I was able to get the certification paid for. I did fail it the first time, but I was able to pay for the retest. It was more in my price range. So I was like, okay, I can cover this. And so studied again, retook it, and I passed. And then I went on to teach that and implement that for Thanksgiving, and we've been using it since then. Um, and so the first person I taught was my parent, and that was a test for me to see like, can I really apply what I've learned? And so now we use it every year for Thanksgiving, and it works.
Wow. Nice. And yeah, tell us a little bit about, I've taken tests before and failed the first time. It's very demoralizing.
I am not a good test taker. Never like high school, like SAT, ACT, like any of those standardized tests. I'm just not a strong test taker. but I think I learned and apply well. It's just like when it's in those certain structures and the rules and all that, which is ironic, right? But I'm just not a good, so I have to study really hard and really thorough. And I do a lot of repetition, but I think my study habits got better as I got older because back then I was a procrastinator, so I just studied repetition to cram. But like now I like actually do repetition so I can really understand and then see if I can apply it by explaining it to someone else if I really understood what I've read.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What do you think is the most rewarding part of this new role that you have?
I get to see different personalities. I get to see a whole nother skill set. I think engineers are really cool people. And I just had a conversation with a couple of engineers last week, and I'm like, you all are solving really complex things at a very, high level very quickly. Because we were talking about cognitive load and things like that. And I think that's very fascinating. Like I admire, like shout out to all the developers, all the software engineers, system engineers. Like y'all are incredible. Data engineers, y'all are amazing.
Yeah. I was thinking, just in case someone is listening, they don't know what a Scrum Master is or, Agile software team and all that. Can you just describe it in a nutshell? Kind of what you think the role is? How would you describe it to someone that has no idea?
Yeah. So I would say Scrum Master is merely a title depending on the organization. I would consider myself an agilist or an agile practitioner, meaning that I'm not beholden to one particular way of working. And so Scrum Masters are typically those who foster an environment to make Scrum, which is a framework within agility, effective, for at the team and organizational level. A lot of misconception is that it's only for the team. It's like, no, it's the team and the organization. But I think backing out of that, being an agile practitioner is that you have the mindset and the application of various ways of working, like work management, strategies like Kanban, or learning engineering practices like XP. So the various scaling frameworks, like learning those and not learning those just for the sake of the frameworks, but really understanding how they move business value forward. They drive strategy and outcomes and things like that. I think, at the beginning, it was like framework, framework, framework. But as I've now gotten into it, I'm like, it's so much more than that. And because I'm grateful I have a business background, I can lean into my business background and understand beyond the prescriptive nature of like the frameworks. The frameworks, help guide, right, and provide like a systematic way to do things. But I
Hmm.
think ultimately we're there to, you know, coach, facilitate, mentor, ultimately to get business value and outcomes. And just keep the organization as a system, keep it been running. So it's in this role in the past couple of years, like a lot of thought leaders and contention around the value and all that stuff. And in some ways, it has failed because of how it's been marketed. But in
Hmm.
some ways, it's still valuable. It's still a role needed. And just one of the stats is coaching. Like coaching is a growing industry, like professional coaching outside of tech is a growing industry. So like it's needed and people just need that guidance. So yeah, that's what I'd say. I know it's a long workaround, but I think that my role right now is a scrum master, but I'm really an agile practitioner, an agilist.
Okay. Good distinction. I like that. And thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you think has that impacted you with I know you have this interest in personal finances and cleaning up your debt and all that. And how has all that influenced it? Or is it totally separate or does it tie back more into your, financial analyst background or how did you gain this love for personal finance?
So it has nothing to do with my career. My personal finance really came out of ignorance and I just didn't have strong financial literacy. I just knew how to work and how to make sure I paid my bills, and that's it. Like I knew those things well, but everything else, just around wealth in general, and wealth is not money. That's a whole nother topic. But just like things around money management, like I didn't grow up like knowing that thing. I knew I was responsible. Like I knew how to make sure as long as I didn't have, you know, zero in the bank or overdraft, I didn't really necessarily have those problems. But I just didn't know and I want to know more. And I'm like, it has to be more than just paying bills.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what made you seek out that type of information and knowledge?
So funny enough is that there was a situation where I wanted to go on a trip and because I wasn't managing my money, I thought I had it. And then when I went to look at my bank account, I did not.
Well, that's the worst.
And the irony was like this light bulb came on while I was in grad school. And so I was like, well, something's not right. Something's not adding up. And so I just started going on a journey trying to learn. It started with the Budgetnista. That was one of the first people I looked at. I found out because I was in school for finance. I also learned about like financial planners, wealth managers, and I stumbled across this former Olympian who was a financial planner. Ended up working with her a little bit about budgeting. So that was the first time between the Budgetnista and her was the first time I heard about budgeting.
Wow.
And and then I was like, well, if I want to get a house, I got to do all this stuff and I got to do credit and all this stuff. And then I was at church one day and I heard about the stewardship ministry.
Hmm.
And the lady was like, hey, like, just calm down and like just learn the basics pretty much. And that's when I got introduced to financial peace. So there's where I got like the foundation for like the system for, financial literacy and, money management. And it really changed my life. So that was March of 2020
Hmm.
when I finally got serious about it. And let me back up. I struggle with linear stories. So I take that back. I misspoke. There was a lady by the name of Rashida Thomas in about 2017, 2018. The first woman that looked like me that was talking about money management. Then it was the Budgetnista. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I was actually at a goal setting workshop, and this young woman got up there and was talking about, this is how you do, your debt management. This is how you do. And I'm like, what? Like, who talks about this? So that
Yeah.
was my first time truly being exposed to it. And it sat in the back of my mind. And then when I actually had that incident about the trip, that's when I went on to further
Yeah. It has to
investigate.
be the right time that it hits you because
Yeah.
people can know.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious also when you're talking about the budgeting, did you know that you should budget, but you hadn't actually done it?
No,
Or
I didn't know about a
was it your
budgeting.
first introduction to budgeting?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I just
interesting.
knew don't run out of money.
That was your form of budgeting in the money system. Hey, that's a lot of
Don't run
people.
out of money.
Just being honest. Okay. Okay. I like that. Yeah. And then tell us a little bit about yeah, your journey with Financial Peace University, because I know you also teach it now. So if you'd like to talk about that too.
Yeah. So I started that in March of 2020. I was in the spring class, and then in the fall, I became a journey facilitator. So I will say the skills in being a facilitator did help with, work and eventually help with, being in the profession I am now. So I will say that's how those are correlated. So yeah, like I just got really rigid, like regimented, and I was so excited. And it was one of those things where as soon as I learned, I wanted to tell everybody, and then I realized people weren't as receptive to it.
I know what you
And I
mean.
didn't
Yeah.
understand. I'm like, how can you not understand? I'm like, wait, you
Once
were
you start
once one of
doing all
those
this stuff,
people.
you think it's so
Yeah,
enlightening. You just want to talk about it
yeah,
all the time, but it's kind of
yes,
judgy with some people. Like,
yeah,
coaching people,
exactly.
you're just like talking at
Yeah,
them about.
exactly. Exactly. So that's how that happened. And so I'm human. I go up and down. Sometimes I'm disciplined, sometimes I'm not, and that has nothing to do with FU and all to do with just, sticking to it. But I will say that I have the systems and I know the systems to implement, and I still continue to teach. And I keep going back because it helps me stay accountable to the journey
That's what I
and
tell
stuff like
people
that.
too. If you teach the class, it doesn't matter what baby step you're on.
Yeah,
You know, when you show up, you cannot be hypocritical.
yeah.
When you're
I'm like,
asking
I'm right
people,
here with
you
you.
did yours.
Like, I'm avoiding about looking at my bank account too. Like, let's do it together. So, and so, but I think the thing I enjoy, again, the parallel is like seeing the transformation, like in
Mhm.
9 weeks, whether it's like a mindset shift or people actually making a debt or having an outcome. And I think that same joy is very similar to like when a dev gets something across
Mhm.
gets something pushed to prod and the customer satisfied, it hits the metrics, it's
Yeah.
delivering value to the company. Like those are where those parallels come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell people, Financial Peace University, even though it's 9 weeks, and it may not change your life, but it's hopefully the kickstart to this whole
Right.
journey. Because learning about money and how to manage your money, that's like a lifelong journey, right?
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
And I've gone deeper. Like like learning psychology, like and how the stories that we know about our money stories are just our life stories because money is very emotional.
Yeah, it is.
And that's something like it's one thing to teach this is how you budget, this is how you save, this is how you invest, but like understanding the history and the behaviors and how money is a symptom of how we use our money is a symptom of larger problems, right? Or, those things. And I try to incorporate that into the teachings when I can, into the facilitation when I can.
Yeah. And then do you mind telling us about your debt-free journey? Because you are on that journey. If you want to share about that, because I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
You're also doing it while you're facilitating and
Yeah.
teaching.
Like I've been on baby step 2 for a long time. Again, like because of those starts and stops, like that happens as you're on that journey. I've only ever missed maybe five out of four. It'll be 5 years, 4.5 out of 4.5 years. I missed maybe six payments. So the first thing I paid off, which I didn't know the debt was my phone. I didn't know it, like because I didn't look at my phone bill. Like, so the one thing I did was cost savings. As soon as I learned, is I saved on phone, insurance, all that stuff. And it actually created more margin in my budget. The next thing I paid off was my car. And so, but the biggest part of my debt is student loan, and so I'm very close to paying those. And that's been like this has been the most challenging thing financially I've ever done in my life. So, and I know a lot of people say it's the home that's the real kicker, but like the amount of debt I had from that, I'm like, oh wow. But I'm so I give myself grace and I like pat myself on the back and I'm like, you're really doing this. And I also like teaching singles because we're kind of forgotten in a way
Yeah,
in the
especially at
conversation.
Financial Peace University.
Yeah,
Yes.
and FPU in particular. And I'm like, yeah, we're doing this alone.
Yeah. That's one thing I do enjoy about virtual because people can
Yeah,
sign up anywhere, everywhere, all across
yeah,
the country. They're not going to a church, right? Where it's in person and there's a lot of couples.
yeah,
And just to take one step backwards for anyone who doesn't know what baby step 2 is, if you're not a Dave Ramsey person, it's all your debt besides your mortgage added up together in a debt snowball. And I think everyone knows, well, you can Google what a debt snowball is, but yeah, you're on your debt snowball journey, which I think is really cool. What would you say to someone about student loans? Because, looking back, do you, deeply regret them? Do you think it was worth it? What's your
yeah. I don't
advice?
regret anything. It's just it was at the time it was the best decision I knew how to make. And so I don't regret it. Um, I just hope that moving forward, there's some changes in higher education as a whole. and that we ingratiate like life, we bring back life skills into the classroom, especially high school. Like, like I didn't learn anything about financial literacy in high school. Like I learned how to write a check when I was 8 years old.
Hmm.
Like my granddad. Like, but in terms of like taxes and all those things you have to do when you're an adult, like it needs to be reintroduced so people can be more prepared.
Yeah, and they do have a
Yeah,
preschool class, but it's not required in Texas to do the
yeah.
personal finance in
Just
high school.
saying, like whether if it's through the school, outside the school, and I say that because like we're in a time where we have so much access to wealth so quickly now because we're in the information age, right? And people can gain the money, but it's like, what do they do with it? And then if they don't do the right thing, there are consequences whether they know it or not. Like Uncle Sam's gonna get theirs whether you like it or not. They don't care that you didn't know. This is a rule of the game, you know? And so I think those things are important.
Yeah. Okay, well, as our time is coming to a close, are there any last words, or do you want to tell people maybe how they can find you if you want them to find you somehow, or find your class, or whatever you'd like to talk about?
So I don't know for sure if I'm gonna teach in the spring, but you can find me here on LinkedIn. I don't have any other social media, but you can find me here on LinkedIn, how my name is spelled. I'd love to connect with you, whether you're a STEM professional or not. I'd love to connect. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I hope I didn't ramble too much, everyone. And I just hope this time was valuable and can plant the seed. If you want to talk about finances, we could talk about finances. So yeah. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much also.